Okay.
Railroad time. This is railroad time.
I'm going to go ahead and just turn this over to Mark because he
Sure.
can kind of give the whole overview.
Yeah. Well, Commissioners, the Juvenile Community Corrections Advisory Board and Juvenile Community Corrections in general, currently there's the advisory board is in place because Atchison County and Leavenworth County, originally the intention was they were going to work together on juvenile community corrections. There's also an adult side to this, and on the adult side we're completely separate. There is no, Atchison does their thing, Leavenworth County does ours. And I think in the past it probably wasn't maybe as big of an issue when the state was funding everything. But here in the last couple of years, the Leavenworth County has began to supplement community corrections, both adult and juvenile side. So when we're providing services, and those services extend into Atchison County, in effect, Leavenworth County is subsidizing those services. So I think probably a year and a half ago, conversation started about, should Leavenworth County be subsidizing those? Was it possible that Atchison County could pay for those services versus us paying for them? And I think the conversation went well at the advisory board level, but for whatever reason it didn't work out to where they could get to an agreement that Atchison would reimburse Leavenworth County or whatever. And I would say that at this point, the whole intent of these joint boards was one county would provide services with respect to the other county. They had this advisory board that was made up equally amongst all the players so that they could make sure that everybody was getting services. But what's happened at the state level is they haven't followed through with that. So they get their funding, we get our funding, and when we provide these services, it's on our funding. So we're not required to do it. Obviously, we don't do it at the adult level. I think for these things to really be functioning correctly, adult and juvenile, they should be done as one. That we should be doing it as a consolidated effort so that one organization runs it. That's how you get the true benefit, and the savings is that you don't have duplication in processes. In fact, our adult folks and our juvenile folks can cover both cases. There are I can't remember their title. They're the corrections officers, community corrections officers. They can handle both. We're obviously much larger. Our adult count. One of our community corrections people has a caseload that is more than the entire county up there. It's not quite as skewed on the juvenile side, but we're still 4 times probably bigger for juvenile as far as kids in juvenile corrections. Longer story longer, we reached out to the state and said, look, your funding is wrong. The way you're funding this is just wrong. Smaller counties, and much smaller than Atchison, even out into western Kansas, they receive nearly as much money for juvenile community corrections as Leavenworth County gets, even though they maybe have 1 or 2 juveniles a year. So where are we trying to get to? The way it's set up right now, it doesn't work for us. It doesn't seem to make sense for us or for Atchison County really to continue in a joint role when the funding is going to them for their services and to us for our services. And we are, again, supplementing it via county tax dollars. So my recommendation to the board would be, and the 2 folks, 2 of the commissioners who are on that advisory board can either blow me out of the water here or agree. I believe that the best path forward is Leavenworth County does our thing, Atchison County does their thing, the funding's already coming from the state, and then we have a better understanding of what our funding formula here locally really needs to be for our services.
Does that affect our cost or anything?
I think absolutely it will affect our costs. It'll affect Atchison County's costs too, but it's not at the level that like at the adult side where we're already separated. So again, I think the intent of the state 30 years ago or whenever they started this whole thing was that there was going to be one entity that provided these services and that you could contract with these other entities. And it doesn't have to be part of a judicial district, actually. And that's where there was going to be a savings because of that, and that the funding could then be distributed that way. But in an application, they never mandated that. They don't require it. So in application, it never really happened. So yes, I do think that there will be a slight cost difference by doing it. But overall, I think we're already supplementing it on our side.
I had a chance to meet the Madam Chair, if I can introduce to Mike at our meeting in Hayes. And I had a good little visit, and I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anybody depending on what you do.
Okay.
I think just one of the things I want to clarify, though, I mean, as far as we're talking specifically about the state funding that funds the juvenile services. We also have grants and that are separate, and I think that we need to clarify because, and rightfully so, that the grants that have been applied for, and hopefully we will continue to apply for, include the juveniles and providing services to the juveniles and the families in Atchison. There's grants in place right now that services are provided in the schools in Atchison
We have a direct, basically kind of like a contract directly with the schools, an interlocal agreement that would allow us to provide services with them, continue to provide that as long as we continue to get the grant funding from the state. We would.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to say that, because my priority is the kids, period.
Right.
And always has been. And I want to make clear that in the aspect of my role on the JCAB, I represent the city of Leavenworth. Just as by the way, my role on the JCAB is not as a county commissioner. It is as a citizen that is a resident of the city of Leavenworth. And so, but I just want to make very clear, because it's kind of hard to juggle the two, that we are about the kids. And some of this that transpired was we have a larger juvenile population in Leavenworth than there is in Atchison. But there are kids that have needs in Atchison that these grants that we have applied for, thanks to Jamie, she has obtained some grants that are for families. So there's educating parents and getting parents engaged, and that will continue, regardless of what the commissioners think is the best course of action. That those types of things and those partnerships will continue.
Yes.
That's my.
Yeah.
I mean,
again, as long as the grant funding is,
right.
we continue to receive the grant
as
funding.
We're receiving the grant funding, and there's no reason that we should not. We should absolutely include as many kids as we can in these grant applications, because that is part of what will be favorably considered at the state level when awarding grants. And so providing those services to the kids in Atchison as well as the kids in Leavenworth County is part of the reason that we get these grants at the granting level that we do.
So you said the cost, there might be a cost differential. Would that involve hiring more staff, or would that, what's the cost going to entail?
I don't. I mean, first of all, on the juvenile side, I think we're adequately staffed for most of our functions. Some of the things that we have to provide 24-hour services, that's where some of the challenges, the intake and assessment. That's where the challenge was that we were providing without being reimbursed for. So that side, that's not going to change on our costs, right? So the potential change for services is probably more likely in the grant area. But again, we already subsidize both juvenile and adult community corrections over what we get from the grant.
There are some proposed changes coming down the pike anyway that will negatively impact
everybody.
But you got to remember the detention center being closed. What did that save us?
I don't remember the number, but I know it's like it was over $250,000.
Right, and then by going to Wyandotte County.
Yeah.
So we have had some savings in the past.
Yes.
I mean, that's not offsetting what it's costing us to rent there, but it was $350,000 in our budget.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and then we have to pay them.
understand that fewer juveniles
And what would that be
period of time
based on?
because of changes in the legislation. And so there's only 6, kids are only with the
Corrections.
for 6 months. And unless they reoffend, which chances are they will, but if they don't, they're out, and it's so you're not keeping kids as long as kids used to be held
that's
in
true.
supervision, and so and Atchison has fewer kiddos that are under supervision. I think
Sure.
right now this year they had 6. I think that went through intake in the past quarter.
I don't remember the numbers, but it's like for their year is like 15, and for us
Mark,
it's
who will
like.
Atchison have to pick up if we
Intake
decide?
and
Well, they'll have to start covering their own intake and assessment. That's the biggest difference.
How much is ours is 40?
I'm just throwing those numbers out. I mean, Jamie would have to get you exact numbers, but we're 3 to 4 times the population juvenile as they are. The adult side, it's ridiculous the difference between us and for almost every county, really.
And I would love to see the JCAP 2 continued as it was, but I don't know. It's kind of difficult because the participation level until just the past couple of months when the discussions came that we were considering, Leavenworth was considering just saying we're not, right now we did not realize we didn't have an interlocal agreement. That's one thing that's out there that's
Right.
kind of hanging out there. There is no agreement between Atchison and Leavenworth for the JCAP service, the services anyway. We've never, and you might want to explain how that kind of works, but we don't have an interlocal agreement, and we should have all along, and haven't. So that just came to light. But there's been so much, I don't know what to put. Before, it was a struggle, even when we would take the meetings into Atchison or the quarterly meetings to have the meetings, no one from Atchison would show up at the meetings except for the staff. And then same coming to Leavenworth, there might be one person on from the JCAB from Atchison to show up for the meetings in Leavenworth. Well, then it kind of picked up, and we had a school representative that would come pretty consistently, but we didn't have our obligatory or whatever you call it, commissioner representative person would not attend the meeting. So it was just kind of, it hasn't been now recently, very recently, there's lots of interest.
Yep.
But
Commissioners change, department heads change, and
it's just, I think that, there just seems to be a lot of hard negative
Mark,
feelings.
going our own way won't affect what we're dealing with the juveniles or the adults whatsoever. I just don't want anybody to get dropped through the loophole.
Yeah. So on the adult side, we're already separate. We have been.
Right.
So it's just the juvenile side.
I see it does.
So
you know where I stand.
yeah, on the juvenile side, it will not change our
Because
services.
we're the ones doing the service anyway.
Right. It will
Will
not change.
Well,
the
we
board
won't,
review
they
that?
are too.
What's that?
Just
The
not the
oversight
intake
board,
assessment.
will that change at all?
No, that will change because
They have
there's
to do it
no.
now on then, right?
Yeah.
If we go that direction.
And, yeah.
So the question Commissioner Stephen asked was the oversight board, will it change? And of course, there won't be a joint
Right.
juvenile community corrections
There
board
still has
anymore
to be-
because there won't be a joint operation.
There has to be a board, an advisory board that's still in place that guides and to comply with all the regulations and states. Like the adult has a board. The adult side
But it'll
has
be
a
made
board.
up of Leavenworth County.
So you said in the beginning, this formula is favoring smaller counties with less people. But is that a state formula?
Yes, it's a state
So,
formula.
so this is something we need to visit with our legislators.
This is something that the legislators, if they could really get after it, would be beneficial to Leavenworth County versus some of the other things that are promoted that are negative. This would be a really positive thing. This would be revenue positive to the county versus revenue neutral or negative. The funding is not based on actual, I'll call them consumers. So the folks that we interact with on a daily basis who are in community corrections, the funding is not based on those numbers. So like a county maybe with a population of, let's say, 15,000, gets almost the same amount of money for funding as we do. And that would go likewise for Douglas County. And that's why we've had to start adding more money to it. And again, we have one of our community corrections officers has a caseload that's more than probably a quarter of western Kansas.
Yeah.
And so it is what it is, but they still get close to the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So I think for our
But it
I think
costs
for our
other
folks,
operations.
there has to be some, again, you have some administrative costs, but from our perspective, if we're getting, and I'm just going to throw these numbers out, they're not the actual numbers, but if we're getting $6 a person and somebody else is getting $250 a person, well, what are the service levels? I mean, I think it'd be hard to argue that they're not getting a better service level, but the state won't reallocate their funding. And there's a lobbyist who has proposed that, obviously, but the state won't reallocate the funding. And when I say state, I think it's Department of Corrections that
Right.
has oversight of
Department
that.
of Corrections that has the oversight of it now. It used to be.
And actually, they're looking at reducing what we're going to get. They're trying to change the calculation so they take more money away from all counties, not just us, but all counties.
So they make the decision in the Department of Corrections about how that's going to be.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I believe the statute actually says the secretary
Right.
is to,
And it's
Okay.
not,
Oh, my.
and so it's
There
kind
we
of.
go
It's
again.
interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess. I mean, it really is kind of a
Yeah,
mess.
it's
Because
one of
right
those
now, we're looking at these cuts and the formulas that are changing. We're not able to take on
I know. Although I think you got some of that at the last quarterly update from the Community Corrections Director, Jamie. But really, that's a maybe. That might happen. It's potentially going to impact us and almost all counties, I think, are going to see a reduction in funding from the state. But again, they want it's your unfunded mandate. They're pushing more and more back onto us, keeping more of the funding at the state level. And then the distribution of what's left, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it just doesn't. Not for us as a bigger county, it doesn't make sense. If you're a smaller county, it probably makes total sense.
For some of the things, for some of the funding that is provided by the state, the counties are supposed to be putting in
Yeah.
a portion
They're-
of supporting those programs. And we are, but
Yeah,
Not
so
everybody is.
no, hardly anybody does actually. Just there are very few counties
there
that
are
actually
counties that are even
contribute
doing
over
what
and
is
above
supposed to
rent.
be-
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What is supposed to be done, and there's no, I don't know what the
Yeah.
word is I'm looking for, but there's no consequence.
They're
for
not. Yeah, they're
doing
not.
so.
And to be
Yeah,
and to be
there's no-
frank, I doubt we're actually matching the amount that's supposed to be contributed by the county. But I've asked for that calculation and haven't received it yet. So I don't know. When I read the legislation, it looks like at some point in time when this all happened, they created a baseline, and that the county was supposed to continue to contribute that baseline no matter what we got from the state. And that goes back to kind of the supplanting talk we had a while back.
And there was
But
one-
they don't provide that baseline to us, so we don't know what it is any longer if we ever did. So we do subsidize. I doubt we're at the level that the state thinks we should be, but we're probably in the top, well, we're one of the top three counties probably as far as giving any money. So
And I think the thing we need to remember is whether it was a good idea or not, I don't think it was. There used to be a department at the state level that oversaw juvenile corrections, juvenile issues and things, and prevention, all the services. That was the Juvenile Justice Authority. And at that point in time, there was a lot of, you could have more focus and more things coming down to that level of.
the funding was all in one location.
It's all
Yeah.
there.
So one
Now it's
entity
under
was
Department
providing
of
all of the
Corrections.
services. Yeah.
Now it's all under the Department of Corrections.
Okay.
And so I think some things got lost. I think there was a loss inadvertently, or whether it was intentional or not. We did a disservice to the young people in this state when we dissolved, the state of Kansas dissolved that department. It was
Community
really
corrections
wrong.
in general, juvenile or adult, is just not funded. It's not funded the way it should be. I mean,
No,
it's
well,
not.
not at all.
There's no way we can provide the services they really need.
As Vicki said, there's no,
There is no interlocal agreement.
and the bottom line is there's no expectation for us to continue this if we decide we want to go a different direction.
That's correct. We would probably just be good to formally send a letter
Okay.
and just saying, look, we've discussed this and we understand where. I mean, I think you can view their meetings and you can decide where they stand on this. But
And I talked to the chairperson,
I think
the lady at their Atchison.
it's probably just time for both entities.
She's saying, I introduced her, we met her at Hayes. I think she's talking the same way we are. Not the two gentlemen, but her.
I don't like the acrimony. I don't like it. There's been, for whatever reason, the history between Leavenworth and Atchison, as far as our judicial district, is just.
I'll tell you, I'm not just that, other issues, but she's new, and she was I enjoyed talking and speaking with her. She wasn't like some of the other things I'd seen maybe on tape or seen on video. She was very pleasant, and she knew exactly, without saying it, the way it was probably going to be going, guiding. So this will be no surprise, in my opinion, to her at least.
I'm one of those people that loves coalition building, and I love.
Well, me too.
But that's just something. That's how I know that things.
This has been coming, Vicki. This has been coming for a long time.
Apparently. I mean,
So the next step would be if the commission I'll have work with legal counsel and the community corrections staff, make sure we got everything in place, then I'll bring it to the board for a formal decision.
Now, when you say that there's going to be some cost difference,
Mike, keep going back to it. Get your checkbook out, Mike.
that would be my concern is if it's a huge incremental increase. But if you think it's going to be,
Like I said, right now we subsidize,
Right.
and when we're
And you
providing
don't think it'll change that
we're
much.
providing a service to another county that doesn't, I think that the impact
all
will
be
be.
here.
I think that the impact will be smaller on us now because we're going to have to split some of the money that currently probably goes.
Right.
They're going to get a little more funding than they probably currently do, and we'll get a little less. But I don't see it as.
Yeah, but we would handle most of staffing.
Is it worth it to make one more go of it to try to meet with them, or do you think we passed that point?
The train and
I'm asking the ones that are on the board.
we've never had any communications at all with the commission, the Fountain County Commissioners in Atchison, so I can't answer.
No, I mean
that.
with your JCAT. I mean,
Some of the.
has the train left the station?
See, I was going to say that, Mike.
He wanted to steal your thunder.
Being a train guy, you did.
I really can't answer that. I think that there are other underlying issues that are at play, and so I'm not sure.
Train?
I'm not sure.
Yes, I think that the path forward has been identified.
Yeah.
I think that we should go that route.
I
Still my recommendation.
I know that's your and I realize that, and I'm torn. Doug is absolutely on board with the separation, and I'm speaking for because he said to. I mean, but for me, it's just I never like things not being friendly, departure or whatever type of thing that were to happen, and so but I don't know. I really do not know. I think that I would think that Judge Loudon would like to probably have, kind of to assurances that it's not going to negatively impact any services to kids because this is about the kids. In this case, if there's no negative impact of the kids and that's the first judicial district children, and that's one thing that this is about is the first judicial district. It's not completely because there's involved in all this is for services, community corrections, and people don't understand a lot of the interactions and the level of County Attorney's Office, they're all involved within this whole process. And so I just want to make certain that we are giving the assurances, as I said, that now it doesn't impact. The biggest impact are on the grants that are not, that Jamie has applied for, that are outside the funding that we're talking about when we separate, if we were to separate.
And is Jamie on board with this?
Yeah.
This isn't going to impact the services that we provide to the juveniles that are in community corrections in Leavenworth County. This will not impact it.
Right.
We're not going to change the services that we're providing. It's not going to happen for us. So
That was a key answer question when I asked you thing, and that's what I was told. So
Yep.
I think it's just that bridge has been burned, and I totally agree with you. I like to have people partner together. That's why we went out to Tongi on that meeting the other day. But sometimes it just doesn't work out, and I don't think this is working.
So you got to make the decision.
well, I'm not sure that any decision is being made other than if the board would like, I do need to know what you would like for me to bring back for an actionable item. Either we need to draft a new interlocal, an interlocal. It's not new. It would be new, but there's not one that exists currently. So an interlocal agreement that combines these services officially, which should have happened whenever, 20 years ago, or a draft something that we are separating completely. They can do adult and juvenile for Atchison. We'll do adult and juvenile for Leavenworth County.
I'm the latter, number 2.
I like having more, whenever we can have more ability to control the circumstances, I'm always for that.
That's what this comes down to.
And that's a good thing. I mean, especially when I hear about some of the way the board has been interacting.
It hasn't been pleasant, I can tell you that.
Yeah, you're right. 2 of their, especially one of them. You're absolutely right.
The meetings have not been pleasant.
The accusations have been directed towards Leavenworth County are not fair to Leavenworth County.
Right.
And when you get that kind of thing that you don't want to bend from it, you beat your head against the wall.
I mean, when I had to step in and
Rocky. Yeah.
So it sounds like the direction would be to bring forward something that formally separates those services.
And we can talk about it again, but that's the way I think we should go.
For me, it's pretty basic. What's going to cost us less? I'm all for partnering with other people, but if we're subsidizing.
There's the key. That's the key word right there. And it's not going to affect the juveniles.
We need to figure out what costs our taxpayers less.
Yep.
But this could incrementally cost us a little more.
Right.
But,
No, it will. It absolutely will
Could-
cost us more. But
Could potentially. The administrative fees that are currently come in might be split instead of 30, but I don't think it's going to be.
I guess the question is it worth trying to meet with them and have one more swing at it, or is it just take this action?
Then the biggest thing is,
This is not, the commissioners really, there's not a majority of commissioners on this board. It's not the commissioners. As far as what we're trying to fix, I just think the time has come that they provide their services and we provide our
services. I agree with what you
services.
said about trying to work together, but I don't see we can fix it.
I don't think it's a
You're
fix.
chair up here. I don't think that's.
I just don't think there's anything to fix. I think this is just the time.
Yeah.
It's the right time.
That's your recommendation. I'm good with that.
Madam Chair, I know this is torn, but I think the kids will be just fine. It won't change.
Yep.
I think that's the most important thing, that we know
Yes.
that's the piece, that's what this is for, and that's what we're doing.
about,
Yeah. Great.
as long as it's not detrimental to children.
My kids, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll get something. It'll take us a little while to get that
This
done.
will be no surprise to them, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, based on their last
Yeah, well, in
commission
interaction,
and
Mike and I
watch, it
had
won't be a
with her.
surprise.
Okay.
Are we adjourned?
We're adjourned.